Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast in this beautiful holiday season. I hope the sun is shining, hope the birds are singing, hope the wind is at your back. I have with me today Dr. Suzy Ross. In a world obsessed with growth, few understand transformation, not as a slogan, but as a sacred science. Dr. Suzy Ross has spent over 2 decades decoding the invisible architecture of change, mapping the spiral of human evolution that turns pain into purpose and loss into light. As the founder of Suzy Ross and Associates, she helps leaders, coaches, and companies harness transformation not as chaos, but as curriculum, teaching them to read the signals of the soul through her evidence-based figure-8 model of transformation, a framework born from her doctoral research and proven to reveal the predictable phases of deep human metamorphosis. Her transformation scale gives practitioners a way to see what was once intangible, a living instrument that measures where someone stands on their journey from fragmentation to wholeness, from breakdown to breakthrough. She is the author of The Map to Wholeness, a guide for those brave enough to walk the terrain of their own becoming, and a global voice for transformation science, bringing insight, structure, and grace to the wild, unpredictable dance of human growth. Dr. Suzy Ross, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
So happy to be here with you, George. I've been listening to you for so long, and just your incredible laugh. And it just makes me laugh every time I hear you laugh. And also just hearing the incredible folks that you have on this. Your podcast has just been an awesome part of my life, and just grateful for you and the insights that you're bringing everyone. And I feel I'm pinching myself to spend some time with you.
Well, thank you for the
Mm.
kind words. I appreciate it. It's been much like you. It's been a labor of love, like a lifetime of work. And it's so awesome to get to share it with cool people. And when you talk about getting to hear insights from amazing people, like today, you're that amazing person. Like you have been working on this thing for quite some time. And it's really, I know when I first read it, when I first reached out to you and I started reading it, I was blown away because I had never seen a model like this before. And it's really started to make a lot of sense to me in my life and the people that I'm talking to. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
Mm. Mm. Me too. It's my favorite subject.
It's
So
a big
yeah.
one, especially right now, the idea of
Mhm.
transformation. How did this come about? Is this something that like you have noticed these transformations in your life, or did it come from a lifelong of struggle? Or tell me about how you've come to develop this model.
Oh boy. I would say kind of going first with a little bit what you were just mentioning. Oh, the Susie part of it. The personal experience from which everything is born. And you know, my first experience was with transformation was when I was like maybe 21, 22 years old. And I just was a lucky fool, really. Uh, I was leading backpacking trips for kids in the Colorado mountains. I was born and raised in Wisconsin, but I really love the mountains. And so I went, and I love nature. And so I was leading backpacking trips for a summer. And at the end of the summer, uh, I had this very powerful transcendental experience, just sheer luck or circumstance or serendipity or synchronicity, whatever you want to call it. And we were hiking through the mountains. I was on the Breckenridge Range, and I could see in both directions. I could see 360, where it's like walking along the spine of the mountains. And I was at the end of the lineup of the backpacking group, and looking around, enjoying myself. And then I just started leaving my body, and I ended up going everywhere in the universe. I had no plant in me, I had no nothing. I just was walking along, and I have vivid memories still of what it was like to be everywhere in the universe. A tree, a molecule of grass, stars, being in distant galaxies all at the same time, and that was normal. And I also became very evident that every molecule of the universe contains infinite knowledge, overwhelming love, and a resounding, grounded power. And just kept going for about a half an hour. I was out of my body. And as I looked on Google Maps and to see the trace where I walked. And when I was coming down the mountain, started coming into my body. And when I had been out of my body, I don't remember seeing any of it. Um, and when I was coming down the mountain and coming into my body, and I could see through my own eyes, and I could see this huge weather system coming towards me, or big dark clouds, and had been raining for a week, and we were really cold and wet. And I thought, oh my gosh, I do not want it to rain. And then I was still kind of half in and half out. So I thought, well, geez, it was like a nanosecond. It wasn't like a actual thought, but it occurred to me, why don't I just move the clouds? Because I am the clouds. And so I did. It just was all a nanosecond. It wasn't as calculated or like I just said it. And then the clouds were all around us, but not over us. They moved around us. And when I, and then there were rainbows all around us because it was raining all around us, but not on us. And when I saw that happen, that I just lost it because I was in my body enough to know what was going on. And it was like a affirmation that what was happening really was real. And it just wept as I walked down the mountain. And the only thing that could help me was singing Amazing Grace, which was not something that, you know, I didn't, Amazing Grace was not a song I sang all the time or even thought about. But in that moment, that's just what happened. Just started singing that song to myself just quietly and kind of to soothe myself because it was so powerfully overwhelming uh, to be in the human body and to basically be in the face of God, what it was. And yeah, and so as I went down the mountains, I came more in my body, and I never shared it with anyone because it was just too much. And I didn't share it for years. I shared it just, it's not the kind of story you just tell anybody. But now it's many, many decades later, and now it's in the forward of my book. So now I'm sharing it widely. But quite honestly, it's a little bit vulnerable to share it. But I think it's also important to share it because, you know, it is grace to receive an experience like that. And I think it's important for me to share it in the right situation, um, to let people know these things really happen. And, I'm talking to a group of people now who know well about transcendental experiences and how deeply moving they are inside of us forever, how they reverberate through ourselves and inform our every breath, um, whether we're remembering it in that very moment or not, doesn't even matter. Uh, these kinds of experiences are game changers. And so, so I think it's important for me to start with that story because it informs my every breath. And of course, it informs my research, it informs my life purpose. And and so and it had nothing to do with, you know, anything I earned. It was just grace. And So I think there's some responsibility with uh, receiving grace, being able to have the courage to share it. So anyway, so there, so you're there. There's my. I wasn't actually anticipating on sharing it, but I think it's important for the reasons I mentioned. So that's my long response to that, which is the undergirding of the figure eight in my research. Probably the more important, really, than the other stuff, because the figure eight in my research, that's all like, you know, the outcomes in this reality, in these three dimensions. Um, of- but now you know the rest of the story.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it. It sounds like divine inspiration, and there's all this language we can use around it. And I know because I've been fortunate enough to sit with some amazing grace in my life, but it's difficult to integrate that. And it sounds from like your story, you didn't want to share it with people, yet it was something that fundamentally transformed the way you work in this world, your relationship with the world, and I'd imagine all the relationships around you. So I can see how all of a sudden this idea of integration was just born inside of you. Like, what do I do with this? What do I do with, how do I share this? How do I tell people this? Are other people having this experience? What do we move? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, yeah, for real. That was a beautiful lead in. Yeah, yes, you're right. Because that happened in the early 90s, maybe 1991, I think, is when it happened. It might have been, yeah, I think it was 1991 when it happened. And so, you're exactly right. In my psyche, like, what do I do with this? And honestly, I didn't think about it very much. Just went about my life. But I started my PhD in 2002, so about 11 years later. And then when you start your PhD, the big question is your big question. What question am I going to have that's going to inform the rest of my life? What question is big enough and important enough to me that one, is not easily answerable. Two, it fills some sort of gap in knowledge where nobody knows this, so go after it. It's got to be big enough. It's going to take a couple years to answer it, and then it should inform the rest of my life and my work. What the heck is that going to be? And I was leading transformative travel as a professor uh, to Costa Rica and Peru, leading college students, and I designed these transformative travel experiences. The purpose of the travel was intentional transformation, and then I was sitting. I live in Northern California, and at the time, I owned a house in the Redwoods, and it was so cool. My front yard was a redwood circle, so that had a deck, and then there was this about 20 feet in diameter, this circle of trees that they were all about two, like a foot and a half, 2 feet in diameter, but then the circle itself was about 20 feet. So literally, you come across my deck, and then you enter into this circle of trees that goes straight up about 60, 70 feet, and that was my front yard. It was so amazing. It was like having a cathedral in my front yard. And I went and sat in my circle, and I was going to do a fasting. I was going to do a ceremony to receive my question for my doctoral research. And so I was fasting, was doing various ceremony to like get myself ready to receive my question, because I wanted my question to not be of me. I wanted my question to come from something bigger. Ooh, so emotional for me, all this. And a couple days earlier, I had been sitting in the circle, and I had read. an obituary of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And many of you probably know of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She and I just happen to have the same last name. Um, but when I read her obituary, it said something along the lines of, she gave the world just a few words, just a few words. And in those words was infinite complexity. So it was the simple elegance of her work, her life work. And it just made me stop. I said, that is so exquisite. It just had such a deep impression on me. I, it's like I knew that's what I wanted. And so when I sat down in ceremony in my circle to receive, and I was planning on like days of fasting, you know. It was so funny because I'm like already, you know, like I'm a really tough person. I have a lot of stamina and discipline. And I'm like, yeah, I have a couple days. I know I'll be in this altered state, receive this question. So I'm like on day one, like the morning of day one. I was only a couple hours into it, you know, and I'm like meditating. And then it came to me. It was like, how do we integrate the life changing experience of this transformative travel? Intentional travel designed to create the conditions for transformation to occur that I designed and led. How do we integrate it when we come home? And I had been reading literature, right? By this time, I've been reading tons of literature in lots of different disciplines, like well over a dozen disciplines, studying transformation, because my PhD is in transformation from the California Institute of Integral Studies. And so I've been studying transformation and all this stuff. And I was like, how do you integrate life changing experience? And I'm like, oh my God, that's it. That's the question. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that can't be the question. Like, I'm only a couple hours into it. Like, I'm not even altered, you know? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, no way, this can't be it. I'm like, I'm going to keep fasting, you know? This can't be it. Can't be that easy.
You must make it
And
harder.
so, yeah, we must make it harder. So I was like, so I kept, you know, going. And by the afternoon, I was like, that's the freaking question. I'm like, it came. It just came. That's the question. And so it was so funny because I'm just used to, you know, my acculturation of it's got to be tough. It's got to
Yeah.
be hard, all this stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, that's the question. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll have something to eat. And
Right?
so I did. And that was the question. And so, uh, yeah, so then I embarked on the research with a team of co researchers implementing a pretty radical research methodology called cooperative inquiry. Thank goodness, because I purposely chose uh, California Institute of Integral Studies and based out of San Francisco, California, because it was the first higher accredited higher education doctoral degree in the world that was founded on the notion of curricula that combines Western and Eastern ways of knowing, Western and Eastern perspectives, Western and Eastern worldviews. Because the premise is the founders of CIS were Alan Watts, and if you might know Alan Watts, Watts, and also Dr. Um, Dr. Haridas Chowdhury from India. And Alan Watts from the United States and Haridas Chowdhury came together with this premise of we have got, if we're going to move things forward, if higher education, its purpose is to answer the questions that create solutions for the future that are sustainable. And if we're truly going to be creating new knowledge, it cannot be from a Western perspective only, and it can't be from an Eastern perspective only. We need to have higher education informed by both ends of the spectrum. And so that's what was born, was this higher education dedicated to holistic body, mind, spirit education that does not solely rely upon the mind, but also the heart, the body, and the spirit. That spirituality is not excommunicated from the classroom. And so, because I swore to myself I would never ever get a PhD after doing a master's thesis. I was like, this is crazy. But but I but when I, as another whole story. But anyway, I
Maybe
was
you could
super
tell people,
grateful.
maybe we
Mhm,
could back up just for a second and explain to
mhm.
people what cooperative inquiry is.
Yeah. So cooperative inquiry is a qualitative research method, and that means that the purpose of this method is to understand experience and to dive deeply into experience and to be able to analyze experience collectively, uh, and understand its underlying patterns. And what is terrifically unique about cooperative inquiry, you can see by the use of the term, is that you're doing it together. So that a lot of knowledge is created, it's always funneled through one primary researcher. And that primary researcher is the funnel through which all of the information is interpreted. And therefore, the knowledge that is produced is going to always be biased to the interpreter, even in the most numerical research that is so objective, is still biased because it is funneled through the worldview and the limitations and the strengths of that researcher. When you conduct cooperative inquiry, you widen the interpretation to the entire group. So the entire group of co-researchers, then you multiply the analysis by the number of people that are analyzing the data. So then the worldviews through which all the data is analyzed is 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 exponential. You're talking about looking at a kaleidoscope rather than a window. And so cooperative inquiry, literally in this circumstance, was my student alumni who had been in the transformative travel experiences, and those who wanted to participate in this research did. And it ended up being 7 of us. I think it was 7 or 8, including me. And that's a typical size. Between 6 and 9 people is the typical size group. And it's extremely democratic. So what happens is the researcher, it's a very, very feminine research methodology. Because 1, you're doing it in a group. 2, you sit in a circle. 3 involves body, mind, spirit. 4, it involves storytelling. 5, it this is the best part of all. The researcher relinquishes all control. And so I relinquish all the control to the group, including the research question itself. So I studied all the literature, right, to come up with the possible question. And then I did the ceremony, which I didn't tell people. And then I offered the research question to the group, and then we collectively decide, do we want this question? Do we want to edit the question? Or do we want to throw it all out and then have a different question? And so uh, the group did decide to keep the question I presented to them. And then we worked together for, interestingly, it took 13 months, which is a little bit long. Usually a cooperative inquiry can be weeks to some months, but 13 months of analysis was quite a lot. So that gives like a little bit of an overview of the method. But the last thing I will say about the method, I have a research paper that I was invited to write about this methodology, to really invite researchers to use this methodology because it's so unique and powerful, because it's designed to produce knowledge that doesn't exist, and it really is beautifully designed for that. And that's what I was going after. um, and the very last thing is that the paper that I wrote really helps to highlight how this methodology is transformative research, because the process itself transforms the researchers. And actually I have a longitudinal study about this methodology that I haven't published yet, but the paper's done, but I haven't submitted it yet. And that's the one where I outline the longitudinal research about how this really highlights how it transforms the researchers in the process, which is pretty cool. Um, all right, so that's that.
Mhm. It's such a beautiful way to do it. And I know you and I have had some previous conversations, and it was the first time I had ever heard of cooperative inquiry. And it blew me away to think about how transformational it is. And it really helped me begin to see the world in a different way. Like, you're right, so much of the work that comes out, and it's interesting because you had mentioned earlier when you came up with the question, you were sitting in this cathedral of trees and you're like, it has to be harder than this. It has to be harder than this. And when it's just the individual, it is harder. We make it so much more difficult. But I I want to jump into the idea of, now that we understand the process a little bit, this is a whole new model. Like, the figure eight model is something I have never seen before. I've definitely read lots of Joseph Campbell, and I've read The Return Home and Meeting the Threshold Guardians. And, so many of us are familiar with this hero's journey model, but the model that you have is radically different. And I can bring up a, a, a model here so those listening can see. So here we go. And let me get rid of this banner right here. Okay, so there we go. Maybe you could walk people through what this figure eight model is. I know this took quite some time, so just go ahead and start wherever you feel comfortable.
Hmm. Okay, so the research produced this, and this is what happened about 12 months into it. And we're all sitting in Kayla's living room floor, and we'd already had like an immersive retreat. Um, and when we got back from the retreat, we laid down all this big, huge paper on the floor, and we were working over all the data. And what the research found is that integration is possible. Because one of the things we had to entertain is that maybe integration is not possible. I mean, you have a really
Yeah.
huge trauma, or you have a really major transcendental experience like what I had, and you think, wow, is this even possible to integrate this? I mean, maybe it's not possible. However, we did find, indeed, it's possible to transform. I mean, to integrate. Absolutely, hands down. And that not only is it possible, but there were very distinct phases to that integration process. And what we found was what you can see here is this lower circle. So the starting point is in the middle of that 8 right there. That's when you get back from your journey. You come home. And so here you are in the middle of that figure 8. You've just come home. And then what we found is there were 9 phases to integrate the life-changing experience. And so those 9 phases are what you see in that lower part of that figure 8. That's the integrative cycle. So we're sitting there, we're looking at that. We have the paper all over the floor. And then it dawned on us, we're like, right when we got home, we just got home from the hero's journey. We got home from the transformative travel. We just came back from Costa Rica and Peru, and then everything is integration. We're like, right there in that center of that figure 8 is the hero's journey that we went on. We're not including that. We need to include that because that was really part of it. Like first we went on the hero's journey, and then we got home, and then we went through these 9 phases. And so then we're like, huh. And so then on the piece of paper, on the big piece of paper, we're like, we put the hero's journey where it belongs, and then we put the integration where it belongs. They're interconnected. They definitely aren't separate. And when I saw the figure 8, it's just, I saw that figure 8 on that piece of paper, and like time stood still. I just was like, holy crap. I was like, that's it. This is the rest of my life right here. Is that figure 8? I didn't say anything. I don't think I said anything, but I knew. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to write a freaking book. Because I studied, by this time I've studied more than 15 disciplines of literature, and I know there's nothing in the literature that shows this information. I was like, this information is going to help people go through the very difficult parts of transformation. It's going to make it easier. It's going to make it visible. It's going to make it like I'm not going crazy. I'm okay. And it's like a map to the process that's invisible. And I was like, oh my Lord. Because at this point I'm pretty tired, right? It's getting towards the end of my doctoral work, and I'm like, yeah, I'm almost done. You know, woohoo, I can have a life again. And I was like, oh my Lord, I don't know how to write a book. You know, all that's going through my head in nanoseconds. But anyways, all to say, that's when the figure 8 was born, in that moment. Because the other thing that I knew was, and that we talked about, is that the figure 8, what it, its meta message is that we weren't planning on discovering, was that if you don't integrate, which Stanislav Grof said many times and substantiated through his many years of research, is that if you don't integrate, you don't transform. And I was like, holy cow, the figure 8 is the image and the process of a complete transformation. And that if we only are following the hero's journey, we only have half the story. We only have half the map. And no wonder there's all sorts of people all over the earth who aren't transforming, because we only have the formula for half. And for the last 100 years with anthropology, we only have half, because all of anthropology, the formula of transformation passed down through the generations and through all the elders and all the circles and all the initiations and all the rites of passage, is the upper half of that 8. You know, you go out on your vision quest, you get the call to the quest, you get identified to go on the quest, you leave, you go home, go out, cry for a vision, receive a vision, and then come home and you tell the story. in circle to the elders in the community what you came to know. And that is the formula of transformation that we've had for now more than 100 years. But the thing is that through the anthropological lens and through mythological lens, there's only half. There's the hidden half that was there all along. But the thing about the lower half of the figure eight is that it's private, it's quiet, it's dark, it's very personal. So capturing that was beneath the lens. And so there was something I was going to say there. Uh, Joseph Campbell himself, I have a paper written about this that provides an overlay of the figure eight through the lens of Joseph Campbell's legacy work. And it talks about how the figure eight extends Joseph Campbell's monomyth, his hero's journey, his incredible legacy, because it extends his work for, I think you're probably seeing how it extends it. And in that paper, I outline how Joseph Campbell himself did not know how to integrate. He knew that integration was necessary. He knew it was necessary for complete transformation, but he didn't know. He said there are 4 ways that he could think of to integrate. He said, the first way to integrate is you get overwhelmed and you just want to go back to the journey. And so you do. You return. You go back to whatever that exciting catalyst was. You go back to the transformative travel because the world is too much. You want to go back to the bliss. And so you abandon integration. So that fails. He said, I forget actually the 4, but 3 out of the 4 are failures. And so 3 out of the 4 ideas result in failure to integrate. He said the only way to integrate is to find a way to communicate what you learned during the catalytic journey. Figure out a way to communicate it without warping it and in ways that other people can understand it. And what he said was, that's really, really, really hard to do. He said, it's very hard to do. I remember one of the ways he said is that you attempt to communicate what you learned, but you warp the knowledge. He says, and that's a very common mistake because it's so hard to communicate what you received. And so you have to warp it in order for people to understand it. But the problem is when you warp the knowledge disappears. It's not actually the knowledge anymore. And so the figure eight then ends up becoming a extension and completion really of his work. Because now with the figure eight, we have in extraordinary detail how to integrate. So those 9 phases are not only just identifying like the character of each phase, but there's a lot of a lot of detail in each of the phases. Yeah.
It's so interesting, some of the language we're using. When I look at the bottom half of the 8, like displacement, grief and denial, disorientation, surrender and healing, and especially dismemberment, I'm often reminded of some of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or when they go to the underworld and Osiris is chopped up into all of these pieces, and it's so even there, I find the language warped. And maybe this bottom half of the eight is a language you can only begin to understand if you've had the experience. In a lot of the schools that taught about the different mythologies, or you read some of the esoteric writings of the mystery schools, it's about the experience because the experience itself is almost ineffable. But once you've been through it, then then you can understand it. And when I look at where I am, where I believe that I am on that bottom half of the eight, like I understand all of those stages, not with language, but with a heartfelt sense of urgency. Like, oh my gosh, yes. And it just calls to you on some level. And we also use you said, there was a word you used, like not the bottom half of the eight, but like maybe the inverse or something like that. But it seems like the underworld to me. I'm like, that's where all the change seems to come, and trying to translate that, trying to tell a therapist or tell your story about that dismemberment. It's not very well received by anybody. And maybe that's because of the language.
I'm moving myself here. I'm in a
Yeah.
cafe, as you probably can tell. Of course, the ladies were right behind me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry for the background music
Mhm.
sound
Oh,
here.
perfect.
How's the sound? Is it a little better?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. Everything's
Okay,
coming through clean and everything is as it should be.
awesome. Okay, perfect. So back to the language. Yes, one of the things that I find so helpful about this is that there is now language. So here we have this lower half of the figure eight starts with displacement, grief and denial, disorientation, dismemberment, and onward. And so now, and I can maybe lead you through it a little bit.
Yeah,
So why don't
please.
I lead you through the lower
Yeah.
half just briefly?
Yeah.
So when we come back from our journey, whatever the journey is, this catalytic journey, and the catalytic hero's journey, um, the top of the figure eight, phase three, that is the catalyst. That is when we either have a trauma or we have a peak. So the catalyst can be either one, as many of us here know. Um, and as you probably know too, um, whether it's a trauma or a peak, it's like two sides of one coin. And then we start coming back from the journey. When we return home, that's the middle of the figure eight center. And the very first part of integration is displacement. When we come home from the journey and we have to resume normal life, we have to face our life, whatever it is, our job, our emails, our bills, our family, or the people in our life, all the same stressors, the same sort of possibilities, the same sort of problems. We have to come back and face them. And the first 2 weeks ish after return is a little bit of a polarity of relief and upheaval. There's relief, like, okay, um, I've returned back to my daily life. There's some relief in that. Uh, and yet there is also this underlying upheaval that happens, and I don't want to get too into the details, but so for example, it usually happens on a survival level. If you have a very large transformative catalyst, like a big one, then the upheaval in that first phase is something like getting in a it could be losing a job, it could be gaining a job, it could be a medical thing might happen for you or a loved one. It's all on a more survival level. Like for example, when I came back from one of my transformative travels, within the first couple days of return, I had a fender bender, literally. So my car was okay, but it was a pain. I had to, literally get it fixed. It was, $600 that I didn't want to spend time on, and those kinds of things. So that would be an example of an upheaval. It's like just happens. Um, and uh, that happens upon return in about the first 2 weeks. After that is the grief and denial phase, and that's longer. The displacement phase is just grief on your first home. Then grief and denial happens. What is that? Well, if you have a positive peak experience, you're in denial that it's over. So you're like, oh, so I'm going to use transformative travel. Oh, I'm sad that we're back from Costa Rica. I want to go back. I love those people. I love the food, the Pura Vida. It was so amazing. And I just want to go back and feel the magic again. And so we escape into denial and reminisce and about the experience and savor the experience and be in a little denial that I'm back home again. And then there's moments where we're not in denial and we're just sad. Like, oh, I'm bummed that it's over. I want to go back and I'm sad. And if there was a trauma for the catalyst, we're in denial that it happened. Like, it didn't happen. There's no way that happened. Some part of us that's in denial that this trauma happened. To buffer our psyche from the pain of the trauma, we go into some denial for some of the time. And then when we're not in denial that it happened, then we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. This is really awful and sad. And there's distress about the trauma, understandably so. So there's grief about that. Then there comes a point, and that happens depending on the size of your transformation. That could be many, many months of grief and denial. But there comes a point where you can't be in denial anymore. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm actually returned. Okay. And then I'll speed it up a little bit. So there's a little bit of, you drop into what's called disorientation when you can't be in denial anymore. And when you can't stretch out that denial anymore, you have to face yourself. You have to face your life. You have to face yourself. And you go into a state of disorientation, which is the foundation of it is, who am I? Who am
Yeah.
I now that I've had this experience? And a lot of people don't necessarily know that's what's going on. But what people have more awareness of is, during this phase, there's a tug of war inside. I want to make these changes in my life. 3 steps forward, 4 steps forward. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to, get more sleep. I'm going to spend more time with my loved ones. Whatever the things, I'm going to take this action towards my goals in my professional life. And so there's this forward movement, and then there's relapse,
Yep.
and then forward movement, and then relapse.
Yep.
And that's what goes on in disorientation. And it's really frustrating because you really, really want a better life, but the capacity for the better life has you doing this tug of war inside. And it's really frustrating and not very fun. But then
What do
there
you think
comes
that
this time.
yeah. Let's stay there just for a minute. Like, what do you think
Okay.
that is? Is that not being able to step into the role? Is that not having the opportunities to do it? Like, what is that moving forward and moving back? Is that becoming? Is that you trying to become a new person or see the world in a different way?
Yes. So our mind can go further than our body.
So
So
true.
when we can get a vision, we can understand a vision for our life that's better. We get all sorts of stimuli from the
Yeah.
environment showing us how we can have a better life. And we can put two and two together with our linear logical brain and think, okay, this is where I'm going. But our body has to be there to make it actually happen. And until you transform, we can't actualize what the brain can create. We can't actualize it in the 3 dimensions because we have to actually transform our entire being, body, mind, spirit, in order to actualize what the brain sees as our potential. And so in the disorientation phase, we're trying using an outdated operating system. We are trying to make change in the only ways we know possible, which are profoundly limited. And so that's why we're 4 steps and going backwards, and we're having this inner tug of war, because we're still having we have outdated aspects. We have aspects of self that haven't been healed. And if we don't get that healing taken care of, we are not going to make actualize those gifts. Another underlying piece is that the essential problem, challenge of this phase is an identity crisis. In the end, we know that the identity that we've had for the last more than a decade is now an outdated identity, but we haven't received the new identity yet. And so we're trying to find the new identity. We're trying to implement the new identity, but we're implementing it using linear cause and effect. We're using linear cause and effect to affect with Newtonian paradigm of, I take this action and I'm going to get this result, which is not going to work. But that's the only thing we know. And so it will result in failure. And the good news is that we enter into dismemberment. And dismemberment is the dark night of the soul. Dismemberment is the dark, deeply painful part of transformation. It is the part of transformation all of us have already been through. We all have been through a dark night of the soul. Unless you're under the age of 15, but even that's arguable that you've been through it, but you were just super young.
Right.
And you didn't have a fully developed brain yet. But uh, we know what this is, right? And so dismemberment is the time where transformation magic happens. So even in the darkest part, which no one here ever wants to go into the dark night of the soul, but when we're in it, that dark night, that is when the previous identity dissolves, the ego death occurs, and the fundamental operating system, your fundamental structure of the self dissolves, and then it dissolves in the dismemberment phase. And this is what causes transformation to become permanent. If we don't go through dismemberment, transformation is not transformation, because it's just change. Change is Newtonian. Change is move the living room furniture around and rearrange the furniture. That's what change is. Transformation is we're making a 1-story house into a 2-story house. That's transformation. And so until you get to dismemberment, it's just change. And so the definition of transformation is fundamental structural change. I'm sorry, structure building. So the very simple definition of transformation is structure building. And inherent to structure building is structure dissolution, dissolving the structure, and then rebuilding a new structure. And then in surrender and healing phase, uh, then life becomes much easier. It's when the dawn starts coming, when the pain starts to soften, and the traumas of dismemberment are over, and you start meeting people who are helpful to you, that see you, that care about you in ways that you've always wanted to be cared about. There's some more support around you that you didn't have when you were in the dark night. There comes some things in your daily life that make life easier.
Mm.
like more, little bit more money, uh, a little bit more visibility to you as a person, um, and you get a chance to, um, things that you've always hoped for yourself start to happen, and it's just soothing. So, for example, there's one guy that I interviewed many years ago, and during surrender healing phase, he started a new relationship uh, with this really wonderful woman, and they ended up moving in together. And she had two children, and he was an only child, and he um, he wanted he his dad really gave to him as best he could, but his dad had to work. And so there was a way that his dad couldn't be there for him. And so here he worked from home, and here he had these two young children in his life all of a sudden. And he was so excited because he could finally give to these young people in ways that his dad couldn't give to him. And so every day, and he was so happy he had the flexibility of being at home. So he
Yeah.
was so overjoyed to, like, every day he could give to these kids. And so it was healing to his heart, right? It was healing his childhood. And he didn't think about it that way. But when we had the conversation, he realized, oh, you're right. This is so healing for me. It's healing my wounds from my childhood. My dailiness is healing, and it feels good, soothing in my heart. But he hadn't put two and two together. And it's that kind of thing. It's not like you're necessarily going to therapy during the surrender and healing phase.
Right.
It's that your life circumstances create the conditions for your unique childhood wounds to get salve, to get medicine. And then the birth phase happens where the new you shows up. It's the new operating system has fully become operational, and the blueprint of the new you, the new structure, has completely formed. And at that point, uh, quantum physics is at play during the dismemberment phase and the surrender healing phase, by which the emergent structure of the new self is emerging and drawing to you a new configuration of the new you that is emerging based on the new structure that is a more complete expression of your essence. And so then you in the show up for the first time. The new you shows up for the first time in three-dimensional reality in the birth phase. And I go into great detail about the three parts of the birth phase in my book. And then in the abundance and creativity phase, that's when
Wait, can I
the
let me pause you
yeah,
let
go
me just
ahead.
pause you one for more second.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because I feel like maybe in the birth phase, if I draw a parallel to like pregnancy and watching a child be born, it seems like there can be real complications there. And I'm wondering how, you know, the pain of being born or the first breath of life, or the cutting of the umbilical cord, are those
Hmm.
similar phases? And I don't want to give away too much of the book. So don't, if I'm pushing too hard
Hmm.
on what the answers are to
Mm-mm,
the book,
mm-mm,
like
mm-mm.
it seems like that there can still be lots of problems in the birth phase, like wanting to go back, or like, or not being able to cut the cord. Or what are your thoughts on that?
Mm. Well, you know what? The beautiful thing about birthing a new human being, an adult, unlike childbirth, is that it's successful every time. because because when we're birthing a new adult human being, um, the new structure is already complete. The
Mm,
bones are already there, and you already have attracted through gravity enough of your essence to the blueprint, to the structure, that you become physically visible. You're already there. And the birth phase is extremely subtle. It's not like neon lights at all. It is very subtle. You even for it took me, like in my book, um, I showcase I walk people through the 13 phases of transformation through the lives of two individuals, Kenny Johnson and Rod Hustern. And I go into granular detail of each one of the 13 phases through their own verbatim words and me interviewing them over the course of many years. But literally, it took me hours and hours and hours and hours to tease out the birth phases of both persons because it's so subtle. But the more I'm asking questions, and
Yeah.
then it's like a relief. It's like very becomes very clear. Um, but it's very subtle. It's not anything grandiose at all. But you have to be able to have attunement to what how so that I can notice for me that I'm going through it. Like I'm in the surrender healing phase right now. And so I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
I'm paying attention all the time because I'm waiting for someone to give me my new name. And they have no idea that they're naming me when they say it because it's a very mundane moment. That it's offhanded comment in some
Mhm.
very mundane moment, but I'm listening all the time because I'm waiting for my new name. And as soon as I hear my new name, then I know I'm in my birth phase. But there's two other parts that are pretty obvious once you know them. So I'm now in the state of paying attention to my birth moment, and I'm getting closer.
Mhm.
So yeah, so there's that. And I know we might be coming up to close
We
to
got
your hour. So
I think we got some time. So
okay,
yeah, let's move. We can take our time on these next ones, but I want to move through them all and I want it to be worthwhile. Like I want each point for people to understand that are following along because I think lots of people are finding themselves here and maybe not even if it's maybe someone's watching this 5 years from now or 12 years from now or
hmm
20 years from now.
hmm
So I want it to be a complete understanding for
that sounds good.
them. Okay.
That's awesome. Uh, yeah. So the birth phase, the birth there are three sacred, really sacred like, parts. It's all sacred, right? But there are three parts of the figure eight process of transformation where we have very unveiled and direct access to the divine. And I outline this scientifically in my favorite paper of all, which is titled "Who Put the Super in Superhero?"
Mhm.
Um, uh, Transformation and heroism as a function of human evolution. That's the title of the paper. My my baby, and I might have to get some water. But so basically, there are three parts of the figure eight. And the first one is the catalyst, phase three. So when you have that life changing peak of trauma, we all know that when you have the peak, we expand. We expand into something much greater than ourselves. And we have access to something beyond ourselves that's greater. We have direct access. In a trauma, the psyche shatters. It's part of the reason why it's hard to recover from a trauma because there's a shattering. And just like you shatter glass, you got to put all the little shards back together and put it back together, Humpty Dumpty. And so it's hard to put that together. But when we expand, there's an intactness to the psyche. And then when you come back from the catalyst, you come back. So there's an intactness. Whereas if the shattering with the trauma, a little bit more to put back together. And so we have this direct access. Then in dismemberment, we have direct access. And so when we in the third phase, in trauma and peak, it's like wow factor, because it kind of is like, you have this peak or this trauma, and it's just a giant wow. And it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Someone turn on the lights real quick and then turn it off, and you're wow, you know. Uh, so there, the access to the divine has this sort of shockingness to it. Whereas when you're in dismemberment, it's a long time. Usually we're in dismemberment for a couple years. And so there's this long experience of being in the darkness, being in the depths of despair, being in a deep, private, lonely, painful day after day, having to face whatever you're facing. But if you can soften into the pain, emotional, psychic pain, physical pain, you're literally touching the divine feminine. You have direct access 24/7 to the divine feminine. And you can ask questions. You can ask questions and receive the knowledge. And so there's no other time in the figure eight in our life that we have that much direct access in ordinary time. And so there is a well of gold in the dismemberment phase, if we can just see it that way and act with that. Okay. Woo. It's dry in Wisconsin. I'm in Wisconsin.
Yeah. The cold and the dry, it'll get you.
I might have to actually get
Yeah,
some
go
water.
grab some water. Do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, when I initially met Dr. Suzy Ross, we started working through this model. And if you look at the lower half of the 8 right there, if you're following along with me, the 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, imagine where you are in your life. Have you had some tragedies? Have you had some big wins? Have you had someone you love pass away? Have you maybe lost something in your life? Maybe your identity, maybe your connection to resources. Maybe you're going through something difficult right now. Try to locate where you are on there. Is it displacement? Is it grief and denial? Is it disorientation? Perhaps it's dismemberment. Take a look. Take a moment to go through and see where you might find yourself on this figure
That was beautiful.
8.
Okay, so that's the second time. And then the third is birth.
Mm.
The birth, I mean, if anyone's given birth, you know, you might have a experience of it. If you witnessed a birth, I mean, it's just so magical. And it could be traumatic too, of course. But when we birth ourselves, it's 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 so sacred. Like, you're when I have witnessed my own birthing and my figure eight process, it's like there was one time, one of my births, I was actually co-leading an initiatory training of Inca mysticism with my dear friend Elizabeth Jenkins. We were up in Shasta, California, in outside, learning these ancient practices, their energy practices of the descendants of the Inca and the Inca, with the Quero people, uh, who I've learned directly from, actually with my students in Peru. And I'll never forget, I was sitting on this downed tree and just kind of just debriefing, talking, chatting with two women, and the one woman turned to me and she was like, you really are. I don't actually remember what she called me, but it's not. She didn't say elder, but it's that kind of idea. She just
Right.
briefly said, "Yeah, you really are an elder." But that wasn't what she said. Um, but in that moment, I was like, "Oh my God, that's my name,"
Mhm.
because the name is an archetypal name, and it's the archetype of what you're stepping into, what you're becoming. And I was like, "Oh my gosh," and that's my new name. And so the next part of the birthing is when you find yourself in a situation where people see where you people see who you really are. So for example, and you're stepping into shoes that are a little bit uncomfortable because they're a little big. So for example, one of my birth moments was I was in Hawaii, giving a talk actually it was an Inca mysticism conference in Hawaii, and all the speakers were at my friend's house, and this was a while ago. It was 2010, and I was surrounded by really notable people. I mean, the one guy was like the top anthropologist in the world, and this other guy, and it was just a small group of us. And I thought to myself, what am I doing here? Who am I? What am I doing here? You know, I'm just, I'm nothing compared to these people. And that's why I felt like I was uncomfortable, right? But then I recognized it. Oh, this is a birth moment. Everything in my life has brought me to this moment. Of course I am here. Like, I have worked so hard to get to where I am. And I actually am I'm, I have something to bring to the table that's legit. And so it makes sense I'm here. I'm just really darn uncomfortable. But I do deserve to be here. Like it wasn't like a pumping myself up. It
Yeah.
was just like our actuality.
Right.
So that's it. I'm talking too much, I think, but I think
No, it's a
yeah.
realization. I think it's a great point.
Hmm.
It is, and it's something people understand, and
So,
I think it's a critical step. Like, you have to realize you are who you are surrounded by. You're there for a reason. And only then can you really embrace your gifts and begin to give yourself permission to be the person, the best version of yourself. And what better sort of a sign from the world to say, "Hey, look around. Look at the people next to you. What are you doing here? You belong here. This is your spot.
mhm,
You've earned
mhm,
it. You're here. Act like
mhm.
it."
Yeah, right, right. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, there's a recognition from others,
Yes.
and that you belong here. You're supposed to be doing this. You're actually, and but so the conditions when what's interesting about the lower half of transformation integration is that it is it fundamentally operates in Newtonian uh, quantum mechanics. So so in we can't integrate using linear cause and effect. We cannot. It is we must engage a participatory paradigm, uh, and a Newtonian paradigm, which means it's a feminine paradigm where integration doesn't happen through force, it doesn't happen through will, it can't happen any of those ways. It has to happen through all the opposite things: allowing, letting go, surrendering, uh, a lot of patience. And so we and so in the lower half develops our feminine, because in order to integrate, we have to exercise that muscle of all the feminine ways of doing, all the feminine ways of being. And so and the upper half of figure eight develops masculine capacities. It is fundamentally masculine. It is about doing, whereas the lower half is about being predominantly. The upper half is very sexy. Other people can see it. People know that we're going on a journey. People are like, people, you can talk about that you're going on a journey with a few people. In the lower half, it is very private, it's inward and dark, and all this internal stuff that people can't see, and it feels like it lasts forever. Um, and a lot of times, the upper half, it's not long enough. And so that's one of the reasons why when we complete the figure eight and you're in the middle of the figure eight, you come to know yourself for the first time. When you get back and you complete the figure eight, what you will have done inside, among many things, is you will have a marriage of the internal masculine and feminine. You will have developed your masculine in the upper half, developed your feminine in the lower half. And then there's the inner marriage, which of course is the conjunctio, Carl Jung, that helps us to explain. That's the whole goal, is this internal masculine feminine marriage, which is brings us into a state of harmony, a state of integration, a state of wholeness. Um, mhm,
It makes me want to change that age-old symbol of the snake eating its tail into like a snake with a loop on the bottom, so it's a full figure eight. I think that'd be a beautiful symbol. I mean, the figure eight is
mhm,
it's already there, but it's
mhm,
yeah, it's amazing to get to see that. And then there's the move into abundance and creativity.
mhm. Yeah, this is the fun part of transformation. Like, so the lower left and the upper right can be more lighter. For sure, the lower left is just, this is where all the hard work, all the suffering, everything you've been through, it all starts to pay off. And so when we move into the abundance creativity phase, this is where we uh, get a chance to receive and reap the rewards. So literally, our life starts really looking up. We start getting opportunities that we always dreamed of. People that have the resources and the knowledge and the relationships that we want and need, they all just start showing up. Um, we start like, so for example, uh, you know, I'm in the surrender healing phase, like I said, but like just recently I got a promotion in my day job.
Yes,
I've been
congratulations.
wanting a promotion forever, right? But this came out of blue, came out of nowhere. So that was so healing for my heart, and it certainly got me excited and happy and all these sorts of wonderful things, very healing. But in the abundance phase, will be more along the lines of uh, I'm really meeting people who are excited to work with me and train with me to learn about the figure eight. There'll be people coming to to do integration work with me, and that is going to be where I'm really starting to feel that abundance. Like, because my whole life purpose is about teaching and training this figure eight. Now, this is the rest of my life is in service of this eight. So nothing is bringing me more joy to talk about it, train about it, lead about it. And so when I get into the abundance and creativity phase, all of the people, the the money, the infrastructure, the everything that I need to be able to deliver my gifts will all fall into place, and I'll be able to deliver my gifts, whatever my gifts are. And so it's incredible. This is why it has to be quantum, because everything starts coming together, and you're not doing anything. You're
Mhm.
doing some things, right? You're doing some things, but really it's the gravitational pull
Mhm.
of your emergent identity that draws the right people, the places, and everything, so that all areas of your life get better. Your eating gets better, your body gets better, your relationships get better, your work gets better, your finances get better, your you get a new car, you get your friendships are more aligned with who you are, uh who you become. so that there's an alignment with this greater version of yourself that you always knew was there. But now your life, your daily life, affirms and reflects who you are and pay you for it, literally. And so literally every single area, because a lot of times people say, oh, well, I'm in abundance creativity in this part of my life, but not over here. Is it possible that I'm in this phase in my personal life and this place in my professional life? And I'm like, nope. Because when you look at transformation, there's either a caterpillar or there's a butterfly. There's no like half caterpillar, half butterfly. It's either one or the other. Transformation is complete. And so really all areas of your life will be in abundance. And when all areas are in abundance, every single area, then you're in abundance creativity. And I'll say uh, people are very optimistic, way more optimistic, including me, than we
Yeah.
think. Because I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed and they're like, yep, I'm in the abundance and creativity phase. And I'm like, yeah, no. but but because once you get in it, you'll know. Because it's like you get really busy. That's the other thing about abundance creativity phase. You're really, really busy. And then after the abundance creativity phase, which would last a couple years, you get really, really busy. And then in the power phase, you have your people in place. You have uh, things start slowing down because you have this whole infrastructure helping you to do whatever you're good at, whatever brings you joy, because this is about joy. Abundance and creativity is about sharing your strengths, what you're really good at, what you love, and whatever it is that you love, it starts to all come together. And then in the power phase, you kind of got it down. You've got your systems in place, your people in place. You've got, you know, you figured out the software and you figured out all these things, and you don't have to work as hard. Really, literally don't have to work as hard. In the power phase, people recognize you as the expert in whatever you're good at. Other people know you're good at it. So, for example, everyone knows you're an amazing podcaster. Like
Thank you.
everybody knows, right? They see your gifts, they see your intelligence, they see your laughter, they see like your passion, and they're like, yeah, you're a recognized, known expert leader in the psychedelic space. And that's emblematic of power phase. Now, are you in the power phase right now? No, because you does because achieved that a while back. You've achieved that a while back when you were in power phase. So anyway, the power phase is more like you're the orchestra leader, and you're leading the orchestra, and all the orchestra is has their own notes, and you're like this. So you're not working as hard because you have all this aspects of your life that you're uh, guiding. And a power phase is so helpful because you have more time, you have more free time, you have more discretionary income, and you can kind of just actually enjoy your life for a change. Whereas during the abundance creativity phase, you're like, whoa, I'm
Mm.
so busy. Uh, and then that happens for a couple years. And then is the integration phase, phase 13. And that's where you enter into the figure eight center, the place where you started. And when we go into integration, this is when we enter into homeostasis. We enter into a state of total harmony where we are in a physiological state of harmony between all the polarities, the above and the below. the fire and the water, the masculine and the feminine, the quiet and the loud, the soft and the sharp, the movement and the stillness. When we enter into integration, we are a living embodiment of wholeness. When we're in that state, there is no resistance between the inner and the outer world. Our outer world is a beautiful and precise reflection of the internal state, so that every part of your life is perfectly in harmony and reflection of your essence, of who you have become. It's not a facade. It's not something like, I know that I'm this, but my outside world doesn't show it. It's that everything is seamless between the inner and the outer. And in that state, we literally have heaven on earth. We are in a state of heaven on earth. And we have brought into the three-dimensional state through 13 phases of transformation. We have literally brought energy into matter, just like a tree, just like a tree that converts light into matter. We have brought light into matter, but it takes going into the darkness, dissolving, creating space for that light to become affirmed into our newly emergent structure, so that we can reconfigure and hold that light in our body. It's the beginning of enlightenment, light into matter. Sometimes it might take more than one figure eight, probably does. Many figure eights, maybe across many lifetimes, until we get a critical mass of light in our body. And then we get to have a lucky experience like the Buddha did, and other people like him, where there's a critical mass of light in the body. Like they say, the individual glows, you know? So, the Inca, the descendants of the Inca, the Quero people, in their cosmology, they recognize that that is the ultimate goal of the human experiment, is to bring light into matter and to eventually where the body glows. And yeah, so now you know a lot more about the figure eight.
Yeah, and I feel like we're just getting warmed up. I thought this has been quite oh, whoops, I missed you there. Where am I at here? There we go. There we go. You know, this whole trip around the figure eight, and you and I have been talking for quite some time. It's been really incredible to have a map, an understanding, to see footprints on the path and understand the direction you're heading into, the different language around it. And it's unlike anything I've ever seen or heard before. And I'm a huge fan of Joseph Campbell and mythology and trying to read and learn as much as I can. But I think what we saw here today was just the very beginning of people beginning to use this map in their life to become the best versions of themselves. And for those listening, this is just the first of many series. We have many more slides and graphs and tables, and you'll be hearing a lot more from Dr. Suzy and I. But as we are coming up to a little bit of the time frame right here, I want to give it back to you, Dr. Suzy. I know you got a book out, and for those reading right now, SuzyRoss.net, there's a QR code right at the bottom right there. You can scan it, you can get to the site, and you can check it out. Let me send it back to you, Dr. Suzy Ross. Where can people find you? What do you have coming up, and what are you excited about? Oh, you're still muted.
I want to thank you for having me here, allowing me to share my joy, this figure eight that's been given to me, to share it with you and whoever is listening. And what I'm what's happening next is there's, if you go to my website, suzyross.net, um, the two offerings that I have coming up is Transformation 101, which is a 2-hour primer where I go into the figure eight with you and get better orientation to the figure eight. There's a coupon code on there for anyone that's listening to this podcast for that Transformation 101 primer. And that's kind of required for anything working with me. You got to understand the eight. And once you understand the eight, then we can move from there. Then I'm offering next in starting in January is Integration Oasis. And that's an integration circle, 6 weeks, 2 hours a week, where you'll have 24/7 private community for posting and sharing and doing homework. And I'll be working with you live every week to apply evidence-based practices of integration, and so that we can help to integrate whatever life-changing experience you're currently chewing on. We will work directly with that. And those 6 weeks can be recurring. So that way, because integration lasts a lot longer than 6 weeks. So if you wanted to repeat and do the 6 weeks again, then the price goes down each time you engage in the 6-week integration process. And that way we'll continuously chew on and integrate and help each other through that process. And then I'll be coming up with Transformation Skills Lab. I don't have that yet on my website, but the Transformation Skills Lab will be 3 weeks. And in that, I will teach different evidence-based skills for transformation. They're basically integration skills. And I will be teaching 2 skills per week where I'll teach it, I'll demonstrate it, and then we practice the skill, and we'll do 2 skills a week. So that way you can literally learn the skill and apply it immediately. And you can also teach other people the skills. So if you're in a situation where you're leading others, you can teach the skill directly that day because they're relatively simple and easy to do. So that way they're not, you just like kind of, it's easy. So why not let's do it. And you can do that, daily. So those are some of the things that I'm going to be offering here starting in the new year.
Well, fantastic. Let me read. We have a couple comments I wanted to bring up from my friend Lydia. Lydia Ferranda, thank you so much for being here. I hope your day is absolutely beautiful. She says, thank you so much. Very relatable. We all need purpose, meaning, and connection. I have experienced stepping in my own, not focusing on what you can't control, letting go. This is a rebirth moment for me. Thank you. I needed to hear this. Also, I believe I am in transformation in the integration phase. Light into matter. Love this. Ladies and gentlemen, go down to the show notes and check out SuzyRoss.net. Reach out to her. Check out the new book. If you found this exciting, I believe you'll find the book to be riveting. And like I said, stay tuned because we're going to be doing a series with Dr. Suzy Ross and I. And that's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you have a beautiful day. Dr. Suzy Ross, hang on briefly afterwards. To everyone else, I hope you have a beautiful holiday season and a wonderful day. Aloha.